A recent survey by Software Advice shows that 77% of us are using one of these to some extent for work purposes. And today we are going to be talking specifically about the consumerization of IT. We're going to talk about some of the things that are going on in terms of security headaches for bring your own device. We're also going to be looking at the direction that BYOD is taking here and how organizations are starting to get ahead of the curve, even incentivize employees to bring their own device for work purposes. Hello, everyone. My name is Jonas Tichenor, and this is ZDNet's Hot Topics. Today we are, again, talking about BYOD, the trends in IT's brave new world. I have a great panel of guests that are joining me this morning. We want to introduce each of them. First, we have Purnima Padmanabham. She is the COO of MokaFive right here in the Bay Area. Purnima,
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. We also have the Senior Director of IT Infrastructure right here at CBS, Stephen Comstock. Stephen, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, hey there.
And my partner in crime, who is joining us from our offices on the East Coast, he's actually in Philadelphia, Andrew Nusca, ZDNet Editor, mentor, and regent. Andrew, thanks for being with us.
Good afternoon.
So I want to remind our guests, if you're watching us here, that this is an interactive program. So you're welcome to use the Q&A widget at the bottom of the viewing console to chime in. You can give us some questions. You can throw us some comments. We'll try to answer as many of those as we can at the bottom of the show if time permits. But we want to get started with a look at the big picture in terms of BYOD. Look, we know it's not new anymore. We know that people are doing it. That is really not what this topic is about. But we want to find out where we are right now, April 2012, in terms of BYOD. I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to kind of give your take on BYOD, the big picture right now. And Purnima, we're going to start with you.
Absolutely. I think BYOD is already happening. Whether it is corporate sanctioned or not, people are bringing devices to work. And what has happened is these devices are so cool, and you're using them so well from a personal perspective. It's just desire and convenience. Both of them play a role in bringing this to work. And once you're at work, then you're using it to access corporate data, corporate information, and be productive. By the way, the interesting stat about this is most people who bring their own devices are usually high performers. They want to get their work done hook or crook. And if they have to bring their own device to get it done, they'll do it.
So it's not necessarily because they want to watch, Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol at work.
No.
I'm not saying I do that. So.
It sounds like that.
Stephen, talk about this. 2012, where are we right now?
I agree that it's already started. It started well long ago, right? So when you started getting the technology that allowed you to do this, email's available now, calendaring's available, you're able to do a lot of this technology, this stuff, people started doing it, bringing their devices, et cetera. I think we're at the point now, though, where corporate IT departments are starting to look at it, trying to figure out, okay, how can we get a handle on it, right? Now, everyone else is doing their own thing. What do we need to do to protect our employees, and protect the data we have?
So it's not as much from your perspective as the devices coming in, because we know that's happening. From your perspective, it's figuring out how to get a handle on managing the data, managing the devices. Right.
And then also managing the cost, right? Because, it depends on your corporation. Some people might subsidize devices or give devices to people. How do you keep that cool factor going? Bez is dead, right? You hand you a BlackBerry, you're going to think I'm the coolest guy on the block, aren't you, right? Woo! Let's do it, right? But, how do you keep that cool factor and still protect, all the stuff that we need to do and make them productive, right? You don't want to make it so restrictive that you can't get your job done. Okay, it's cool, but, all I can do is watch videos. Right?
Andrew, I don't want to put you on the spot here. I'm assuming you're using your own device there in Philly. What's your take on BYOD in 2012?
You've outed me, Jonas. Much to Steve's chagrin, I'm talking to you from a personal computer. It really is the case that it's already happening. I use this computer all the time to do my corporate work. At CBSI, we've done a good job of keeping everything in the cloud, so it's pretty frictionless for me to do that. But that's the reality of it, that I'm often telecommuting, going other places, and I need my personal stuff because I just, I got to connect wherever I'm at. As for where we are, per what both of them said, it's really that tipping point where IT's got to do something about this. There's so many personal devices coming into the office, that it would be the word slips my mind, but it would be a real problem if they just let this go without, unchecked. On the other hand, what you're starting to see is IT becoming an enabler and not a disabler, which, that's really encouraging.
Yeah, I want to take a look at kind of a little bit of what's driving this trend. We have a PowerPoint full screen we want to pull up here. It really talks about what people are willing to give up in order to have this work-life balance, or the ability to be able, and I've said it, to work from the backyard or the beach. Yeah. Take a look at this. Kind of interesting. It's from Harris Interactive, and it's basically showing you here that what people would be willing to give up to have BYOD as a reality in their organization. 34% said they'd give up social media. 30% said they'd give up texting. 29% would give up chocolate. 25% would give up their smartphone, although I think that kind of plays into what they're talking about. 17% a salary increase, Stephen. They'd give that up. Half of their vacation days, 15%. They'd give up their spouse. For 5% would give up their spouse.
I'm a little concerned about the showering.
Yeah. Right. What's
to give up showering?
Yeah.
12%.
12% would give up showering.
That's concerning.
Stephen, we'll start with you. Obviously, that's kind of a fun thing. It was a real survey, but I think the idea here is people really want to have the ability to be able to work and collaborate from anywhere, and these devices they make it possible.
Right, they do, and exactly, and the part is, how do you make sure that they can work from anywhere, right? So, yeah, okay. So you have your. Oh, I'm not going to.
No, you can touch it.
I'll touch my own iPhone.
No, you can touch my iPhone, sir.
Oh, no, I don't want to do that. But do you provide the tools that they can work everywhere, right? Again, back to the whole thing that we're talking about, and I think what Andrew said, becoming an enabler, right, versus a disabler. So can I get to my email? Can I get to docs? Can I get to the stuff I need to do to operate, whether I'm on the beach in wine country, at a concert, wherever, right? That I can get it done. And actually, I think you said something earlier before we started, is actually people are more productive. How many times do you go to a business dinner and you look at people and we're not talking to each other, we're reading email, or we have the devices in our hands doing our thing, right? So I'm not sure I answered your question. I just kind of.
You know what? You did actually. I'll send it to you now. Anything surprising about this poll? I mean, it's a little bit fun, but it speaks to the reality.
Absolutely. And again, I think what we were talking about earlier, a lot of times this is driven by people who are high performers, people who are driving your top line growth. And they're saying that, look, I'm working all the time. I have to combine my personal and work. And that is why these devices become very important. I can make a personal call, let my kids know I'm going to be late, but at the same time, I can be at that corporate dinner. And the convergence is happening. And in terms of the IT problem statement, I think it has changed. It's no longer how do I lock down, how do I prevent, but it is how do I enable this work? How do I enable seamless productivity while securing what matters? Yeah. And I think this is something which is very key, which is maybe later in the discussion, Steve, we should have, which is defining what matters.
Yeah.
Do you really care about the table? Do you really care about the hardware? What do you really care about as an IT organization or as an enterprise?
Steve, you want to address it?
Well, she kind of took my steam away.
I apologize.
No, go ahead. We'll find something else to bring my steam back up. But you're right. It's really the use case of what do we need to protect, right? Versus, it used to be to deny all and then allow in, right? Now it's the not anything goes, but what are the assets we need to protect, right? And what are they using the devices for, whether it's a laptop or an iPad or an iPhone or a Droid or whatever, right? What do we need to protect?
That's right.
And then how do you isolate it between personal and private, or personal and business, right?
That is exactly right. And when I talk to my CIO advisory board, Steve, what I've found is it changes the equation between the employee and the IT. Mm-hmm. Instead of it being, okay, I'm controlling, you become partners in the game and say, okay, you bring your own device, but follow the policies.
Yeah.
Rather than everybody trying to circumvent the policies in order to be compliant.
Right, and that's a huge challenge, right? In that, by bringing this in, you have the policies that are set. How do you control those policies?
That's right.
And I'm not trying to set you up here. But
No, but you're taking my steam out.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Jerry.
I just want to let people know that if you're just joining us, we're talking about bring your own device, some of the trends here in 2012, where it's going in the enterprise. I'm with my guest, Purnima Padmanabham, who is with MokaFive, Stephen Comstock, who is the Senior IT Director here at CBS, and joining us via Skype, Editor Andrew Nusca with ZDNet. Again, if you have questions or comments, please don't hesitate to chime in here we're using the Q&A widget at the bottom of the viewing console. We are shifting gears into security, which is obviously where you two cats want to go right now. But, we can't get far into the conversation, and I want to bring up a quick quote to set this up. This coming from SolarWinds, who the marketing manager is saying, quote, they are trying to build the boat while sailing it and are learning every day that what the implications of BYOD are to their corporate networks. This is a great way to sort of set up this conversation. They are trying to build the boat while they're sailing it. Steve,
right.
Obviously here at CBS, you're probably experiencing a bit of this every single day, which is why we've looked at possibly putting this together as an organization.
Right, and the funny thing about it, that quote is perfect, because you start building a BYOD policy and you're about to release it, and then another thing comes up, and then you're like, oh, okay, what about this, right? So you start off with, hey, let's get rid of BlackBerries because Bez is dead, again, my favorite quote. But then it starts to move into, okay, now how do you secure a device, and what's company sponsored and what's not, and then you get into, okay, how do we got to save cost, or what cost do we need to save? And then it starts trickling down. It can become a Pandora's box pretty quick, at which point I've kind of came to the conclusion you just got to pull the trigger at some point and make sure that you have the basics, of your policies, security, and maybe some economics around it, and then you kind of go. And there's some tools you got to have as well, an MDM or some sort of device management to protect yourself. Andrew,
from a user perspective, you and I are part of this at CBS. We do bring our own device. You've obviously admitted it now. Is there some structure that, from our user standpoint, has to be in place for employees to actually want to do it? Obviously, we've all got different types of devices, but to Steve's point, it has to be easy to do and it has to be functional.
Yeah, what we were talking about before about IT, enabling, disabling, one thing you don't want as a user is IT to be the gatekeeper to doing your job. I file stories all the time and from all over the place, and the last thing I want is the IT guy to get in the way between me and the publish button. So that's definitely a concern. One thing that I thought of as Steve was talking was, I was at a cybersecurity conference in Manhattan last week, and one thing that kept coming up, and this was at the highest level, right? We're talking like national government stuff, was that we really need to decide what's most important and what's not. And with BYOD, what you're seeing is thankfully through technology and also a better understanding, you're seeing kind of shades of gray in terms of security. And that's a good thing, because some things aren't really that private. A lot of what I do is not that terribly important to anybody who wants to threaten my company. But there are other employees that are. So having that nuance in there with the help of technology and so forth, I think would make it a lot easier for the user and make it seamless, really.
Yeah, and to your point, right? You were talking at the security conference where the old school is we could control it, right? We knew what assets to protect, right? Now, as these iPhones and iPads and BYOD comes out, that becomes gray, right? And as they can do more, more content needs to be protected or evaluated at least, right? On what do we need to protect? Because, you start in the old world that, we were in a pretty secure world where it was contained, right? You did word processing or whatever, it stayed pretty much within the company. Now, as we were debating earlier, I can do word processing on my iPad. I can do a secure shell into a system via VPN on my, where do you start to protect? And I think you're making a good point. You got to figure that out now, because it starts to get gray as these things advance.
And I don't want to throw you a softball toss here, Purnima, but I would like to get, first of all, a little bit of the genesis of MokaFive, because this is the world that you're living in. This world of BYOD, we're talking about what to secure, what not to secure, but MokaFive has come about in a very interesting way. First, let's talk about the genesis of MokaFive. How did you guys come to be?
Absolutely. So MokaFive was started about 5 years ago by a professor from Stanford, Professor Monica Lamb, and her 4 PhD students. And the idea was at that time around desktops and laptops, saying these are too hard to manage. When people add stuff, it constantly breaks. How can you actually make them easily managed so that a corporation can offer a secure, consistent experience to their users? And so they decided to take the desktop, virtualize it, effectively you're putting it in a bubble wrap, and say, okay, now I can put it on any device. I can put it on a Mac, any computer device. I can put it on a Mac or a PC. Now, the minute they did that and said, okay, imagine I could also control the bubble centrally. So I have now a virtual desktop that could be running on your Dell here. That could be running on my MacBook Air right there. And the advantage there is suddenly now you have disintermediated the device. What you're telling is what is important to the corporation is my OS, my applications, and my data. I don't care about the rest. And to some extent, the way the analogy I say is, we used to have desktops, and desktops used to tether us to the furniture. Then when we got the laptops, we ditched the desk. We could work on a compute device without the desk. And with MokaFive, the underlying hardware device becomes immaterial. Like it can be a Mac or a PC, a personal or a corporate machine. What you care and what matters is that virtual bubble. So that's how we started. And what happened is, as a lot of big companies have adopted us to provide BYOC, so choice of Mac or a PC, work from home, work from personal machines, and so on. But the tablets, as they started coming into the enterprise, it was a natural extension for us. And this is where, Steve, the core concepts start coming into picture, which is, one, we wanted to make sure that the personal stayed private and separate, and the corporate was always secure. So this separation of personal and corporate, yet having them both play on the same device, is a very key concept. The second concept we wanted to stay true to was online-offline execution. iPads, Macs, iPhones, these are beautiful devices, but I just tell people, if I shut the MacBook lid and it became a beautiful brick, it's no use to me. You know, it's a nice looking brick, but but it's no use. So for us, it was very important that a user could be productive online or offline. So that took away just only cloud-based strategies out of the picture. Cloud can be a component of it, but not all of it. And then the third piece, we wanted to provide a rich native experience. Have you ever tried navigating, as you said, using secure VPN to some desktop sitting in the sky? It's a nightmarish experience.
We're watching video, by the way, of one of the MokaFive sort of promotional advertisements. That's just, it's showing, and we've seen it, sort of the new way of doing things with people bringing their own devices or computers. So that's what we're seeing right now.
That is exactly right. So what we did for the tablet was very simple. We said, let's take the same concept and take what matters, namely corporate information and corporate data. Put a bubble wrap around it. Make sure it's encrypted and drop it onto your device. Now, the rest of the device is BYO device. You may have iTunes, books, I don't care. What IT manages is the bubble. A person joins the company, click of a button, you drop the bubble in.
Interesting.
A person leaves the company, wipe out the bubble.
So your model is basically virtualizing the desktop on the device.
No, so virtualize.
Because you're encapsulating it with some sort of virtual
encryption,
and then where it's actually, as far as I'm concerned, another app on the device.
Exactly. We are just making, on a computer device, what we did is we are making your corporate desktop a secure managed app on that computer device. On a tablet, we felt trying to run a full operating system with apps and all doesn't make sense. So on a tablet, what we do is we just encapsulate the data and encrypt it and drop it there so you can click on any piece of information, view it. So if I'm a traveling salesperson, I've got price lists, I can just click on it. I've got my PowerPoint presentation, I click on it. I've always got the latest.
So it's like a secure mount of just the data then, and not necessarily apps?
It is a secure container that allows you to have encrypted data. But then the question comes, what if I want to edit that little document just before I send it out? So that is when we said, look, we don't want to be creating all the apps. There are a lot of app manufacturers. So as long as you decide that these 3 enterprise apps are good, you can simply whitelist them, and we'll allow you to open that encrypted data in that app. And then once you've edited it, save it back.
So Andrew, to bring you into the conversation a moment, you were talking a minute ago about keeping IT out of the middle of the ability to hit publish. It sounds a bit like MokaFive is doing that from your perspective. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, when I've spoken to actually MokaFive and some of its competitors, we're starting to see now that kind of finer tuned technology where we can that it's not so rudimentary, it's not so rough, it's not so yes or no. It can be okay, this app, maybe not that app, or if you lose your device and we nuke it, we can just nuke the corporate stuff, and then the thief can get away with your baby pictures or whatever. So as a user, right, that's much better. Now, obviously, the devil's in the details. Is it intuitive? Do I have to remember to open up a certain thing, yes or no? With MokaFive, I don't believe that's the case, but what we're seeing across the kind of this little cottage industry here is, well, it's not really cottage, it's full blown, isn't it? Is further nuance, which as a user, great. I don't want to take 2 phones to my meeting.
So Steve, from the corporate IT perspective, is the concern for you obviously the idea of a lost or stolen phone and what could be on that phone, or is it speaking to sort of what Purnima's talking about, and it's really the data that CBS is looking at, going, we've got to make sure this is protected?
It's the data, really. It doesn't matter whether the phone's stolen or lost. I mean, say I leave the company, right, and I walk away with the company. Do I walk away? What data of CBS's do I walk away with on the phone? Right. That's what I care about. And how do you clean it up? Again, I don't want to wipe Andrew's baby pictures off his phone.
Yes.
He cherishes
those.
He
keeps the pictures of himself as a baby. Exactly. It's just kind of weird.
It's just, we lose them for hours. So, but I want to make sure that those docs or those editorials that he wrote or whatever, that he's moved on to some other company, that those are wiped, right? Because those are CBS property. Unless he's a contractor and he's doing it for somebody else.
Right.
So how do you segregate that? So
that's right.
And then that's the interesting thing that you were talking about, where, encryption's a huge thing as well, where, if I lose my phone or a phone gets stolen, let's go that bad case scenario, I'm at a bar, someone steals it, big deal, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you want to get to is, okay, I don't care. If someone steals it, we'll wipe the phone, and they didn't have a chance to get anything in that 5 minutes they had.
Or better still, just wipe the bubble.
Or wipe the bubble.
Wipe your corporate data, your corporate
yeah,
information.
right. I mean, it depends. It's at that point, it's really the employee's call, right? If Andrew doesn't want his baby pictures out there in the wild, we can wipe the whole phone, or we just wipe the corporate stuff and the bubble goes away, right? But my question for you though, unless you have
no, please.
Okay. So my question for you though is around the apps. So one of the things that we look at is what apps do we want to run on the device, right?
Yes.
Again, I don't want to get in Andrew's way of pushing the publish button,
yes.
right? Because he looks pretty intimidating. But
you have no idea, sir. I don't even want to get into it.
I just set myself up. Next time I'm in New York, I'm done. It's over. So I see I lost my train of thought. But anyway, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry.
You don't want to get in the way of pushing his publish button.
Right, I don't. But on the other hand, there's some apps that perhaps are less secure, especially more in like the Android market, where they could potentially get in and get that information unknowingly, right?
Yes.
So I want to limit some of the applications and vice versa. There's some applications I want them to run.
That's exactly right.
Again, we're CBS.
Yes.
I want 60 Minutes on everyone's phone, right? We should be running our own apps.
Yes.
We should be running the CBS Sports, a couple plugs, right? But CBSSports.com app, the football app,
right.
The ZDNet app, we should all be running those on our devices, right? So you join the company, you accept the policy, I push those apps to your phone because you're now part of CBS, CBS Interactive, CNET, ZDNet, pick your flavor, right?
That's right. And what we found was, let us say you join the company, and when you say BYOD, maybe you walk in with your own laptop. Mm-hmm. You've got your own, let us say, tablet or iPad. You just go to a central console, pick up Steve, and say, okay, I'm going to squirt down a virtual machine for Steve on his laptop because he needs to create everything there. And by the way, on the iPad, I'm going to give him this container where he can keep all the critical CBS data. And I'm going to whitelist 60 Minutes and these 3 other apps because I feel they are secure. So now that pretty much becomes the world. Now, let us say Steve leaves. You just click a button and you can wipe all the instances of corporate environments across the different devices. So you're really managing the user experience and the corporate experience as opposed to managing the device. And I think that is the transformation that needs to happen, which is it's not about the device. It's about managing corporate information and the corporate experience, which is information plus apps, right?
Is looking at what we're doing here at CBS, and talk about as much as you can, but the idea here is to unify the type of device that we have coming in and in a way incentivize employees to use these devices. How is that being done?
Right. So we're looking at a number of different ways and how we do that. One is to make the devices themselves employee responsible. You bring whatever device you want. We don't care. If you have a corporate need for the plan, let's prefer put it on our plan because we do some negotiations I can't talk about. But things like that, not making it restrictive, right? Not saying, oh, you got to have a BlackBerry or you have to have an iPhone. I don't care. You can have an iPhone, an Android, whatever your flavor is. Bring it in. The one thing I haven't figured out, to be quite honest, is the tablet strategy. We don't necessarily do a whole lot of BYOD to Andrew's chagrin, to use his word, on the laptops, right? We have some, but more like what's the next tablet thing? Because I see more and more people, especially the heavy travelers, ditching the laptop and taking their iPad. And how do you incentivize that? And honestly, I struggle with that question because I'm in two worlds. One, I don't want to get in Andrew's way, but on the other hand, it's my responsibility to save the company as much money as I can, right? So working with vendors, seeing what we could do to subsidize devices.
Or have you looked at a stipend?
Stipends. We looked at
approach?
Stipends on that. We also looked at both stipends on the device themselves as well as on the plans.
Yeah.
So, let's say, Jimmy Joe thinks he can get a better deal through Metro PCS or something like that. I'll give him a stipend. You can spend this much because I'm already getting this much in savings for my corporate plans.
Yeah.
Or the random people. I travel once a year and my boss says I can expense it for this month. Okay, that's cool, right? So
it really depends on the use case. I mean, in my example, like I would love for CBS to give me some kickback on my laptop because I use it so much, but I wouldn't expect that on my phone because I still feel like it's my personal phone, even though I use it for both uses. It's really like an 80-20 versus my laptop, which is definitely the other way around. So it definitely, I think it really depends on the use case, where an employee really feels they need a particular device. In my case, I own a MacBook because the battery life was very long. When I first bought it, it was the only one that could go 7 hours. That was critical for me covering conferences. But maybe other employees, it just doesn't really matter. So I think, IT departments can save some money and also some headache by identifying who they really need to bother with.
Yeah, that's interesting too because from the laptop PC perspective, honestly, I'm being upfront. I haven't really thought much about it, but if Andrew's using his own device, maybe there's a stipend that we give back that actually saves us because I don't have to buy him a new MacBook Air that I had queued up for him.
And we have seen evidence that saves cost. And
right.
It's at multiple levels. For employees, you can give stipends. But imagine people like contractors and partners. Today, a lot of organizations provision and deprovision laptops for them. Now you can just say, hey, get your own laptop, put it on the guest network, you squirt down this virtual environment. 3 months later or 3 years later when they leave, click a button and recover everything.
Right.
So your incremental cost of extending your enterprise boundary to a contractor or to a partner or a non-employee becomes zero, right?
You guys are really good because you've shifted into the incentive portion of our show without me even making a call out.
Oh, would you like to still make a call out? I don't want to get...
Now we're talking about the incentives
there you
of
go.
BYOD. Right. So I like the way you're going with this. So follow through with this because I think it's important. The idea that you've talked about is the concern is the cost.
Right.
And there's a lot of different types of employees here at CBS. We do have contractors. We do have full-time employees. But this idea of being able to sort of loop in without extra costs is kind of huge.
And I would actually claim if organizations look at BYOD holistically, you can actually cut costs, not just contain. A lot of times it's about, oh my, I'm going to do BYOD. How do I contain cost? But today, most organizations, again, as I said, for partners, contractors, non-employees, they tend to give assets because they want control of the corporate information. But imagine you could just tell your contractor, get your device. Everybody has a laptop. Get your device, connect to the guest network. I'm going to squirt down this entire, corporate environment. And by the way, everything stays protected in it. You can VPN and connect my network only through the protected environment. And when you leave, I recover everything with a click of a button. And the advantage of the cost is, there's twofold advantage. One is no capital cost. You're not creating this bank of devices that you're checking in and checking out for people. The second advantage is more flexibility. The cost of provisioning and deprovisioning people also goes down to zero. You can be a lot more flexible as a business when you acquire that new company or you add on a few contractors. You don't have to wait for a week to say, okay, now you can be productive. You can do instant on. And that's really the value.
We have a couple of questions. I'm going to throw these out to the group. One of them is coming from Bo. As a software as a service company, what do we need to do in our software development to prepare for the BYOD movement? Anybody have any ideas on that one?
It would, again, software as a service is just a model. If you are assuming as more applications go to the web, it is a good thing. And as long as HTML5 is a big revolution in that space, and as long as these applications can be rendered well on different form factors and different types of devices, I think that's what I would recommend software development companies should look at. I don't know, Steve.
I agree. As long as it could operate on multiple form factors.
Yeah.
I don't care, right? Because the software as a service, a lot of that data is you're managing it, you own it, you're in charge of it, right?
Yeah.
We're paying you money to make sure you keep it safe, et cetera. So as long as it operates on the device, it's all good.
Purnima, while I've got you, we got a question specifically that's directed at you. It's talking about some apps require real-time performance.
Yes.
And that could likely suffer due to the performance restrictions in VM. How is MokaFive addressing that specifically?
I would say it's actually contrary. So what we have found is most CIOs that we talk to have told us the following. They are not going to settle down on one type of application. We will have cloud-based apps, SaaS apps, published apps, streamed apps, and rich, high-performance local apps. And so the model that IT chooses should be able to support this entire variety. You can't, contain yourself to just one area. And what we find is because we are running the virtual machine at the endpoint, I'm leveraging the local compute of the CPU, local compute. I'm leveraging the local memory. It is not going back to some cloud server and coming back. So for rich, interactive apps, actually, it is a very, very good model because I can be online or offline. Everything is locally getting computed. And
the data center is doing the heavy lifting, in other words.
No. The endpoint. Endpoint is where everything is getting executed. So let us say I'm building a PowerPoint, right? In some other cloud-based models, every time I move a cursor, that cursor movement has to go back to the cloud and come back to be re-rendered. With MokaFive, all that compute happens locally, so it's much faster.
Right, but you still have an overhead. I mean, there's a 5-10% overhead on that, right?
Absolutely. There is no denying there is a overhead. Anytime you have a management infrastructure, there is an overhead. And the question is, are you using the resources at hand? How are you leveraging the resources at hand well? And our whole premise is, look, distributed computing is powerful, cheap, and getting cooler and more resilient by the day. Why will you not leverage that? Why will you consolidate and pool all the risk in one place? When you can, with distributed computing, when your Dell goes down, only you get affected. I don't get affected.
Yeah.
And that is the power that we are leveraging.
So let me be devil's advocate here. So you got the a virtual instance on your, let's say, your laptop, right? How is that different from putting an agent on that laptop to protect that laptop?
Big difference. I'm not going to let you put an agent on my personal machine. the big difference between agent-based approach and a container approach is an agent tries to take over the whole device, the personal space and the corporate space. There's no separation of corporate and personal with an agent. And so that is why those agent-based approaches are, almost taking a big hammer to attack a problem. This is more surgical. You're saying, I don't care what else is on that BYO device. I'm just going to manage what matters to me.
So then how do you protect then from someone not just taking a work app or work product and putting it on the non-VDI or
Absolutely. That is wonderful. So how do you prevent? So the idea is once you have created this encapsulation, we give you about 90 plus policies. Control whether data can go in and out, whether you can add apps or not. Can you print to a USB? Can you use a port? So essentially, you are fully managing the bubble. And you decide how loose or how tight you want your controls to be on that.
Right. Well, maybe I wasn't clear. So I have Excel on my non-bubble.
This is the last point because you're taking over.
Sorry.
No, I want to finish. Go ahead and finish this point, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Right, cool. So
this will be the last word.
So I have Excel in my non-bubble, and I have Excel in my bubble. What prevents me from working on a finance Excel spreadsheet in my non-bubble?
You won't be able, as long as you can't take, if you choose to, you can lock down your corporate bubble or the corporate VM so that the data, the corporate data, namely your corporate Excel, cannot be used in your personal environment. That is a choice that you have. That's a choice we give IT.
I can tell that Stephen wants to go further. Andrew, I am so sorry that these two cats have bogarted the conversation today, but I want to thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
My pleasure.
Stephen Comstock with CBS Interactive, thank you for being here. And MokaFive's Purnima Padmanabham, we really appreciate having you on the program today.
Thank you.
If you happen to miss a portion of today's conversation or you'd like to watch it again, it is going to be available on demand. I want to thank my guests, and for everyone here at ZDNet's Hot Topics, I'm Jonas Tichenor. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you next week.